Okay, so we're actually starting to paint the tabletop a little bit and blend in the cast shadow. What I've decided to do here is bring this color to be a little bit more darker in value. So I added a little bit of that cobalt blue and titanium white and started painting the surface a little darker. Now if you notice, I'm just kind of touching it up a little bit. I'm not doing a whole lot of folds or wrinkles on this piece of tapestry, only because this tutorial is not covering any type of painting on drapery, so I'm going to leave that alone and just make the tabletop a little simplistic in terms of painting. Okay. Now if you want to, you don't have to use the color that I got here on the tablecloth. You can use something different. Maybe you might want to go with an orange or a red, a light green. Whatever you feel comfortable with is really up to you. I want you to be the creative genius behind your painting rather than me dictating and directing what your painting should look like. Now you've noticed I'm actually going into the cast shadow a little bit here. I'm going to blend it a little bit. Of course, you could bring some of this color into your cast shadow to kind of make a little bit of transparency happen. Now, one of the things that I've learned in painting is that nothing is completely solid black or dark. In other words, a shadow is really not black or gray. It's basically translucent and transparent based upon the color that's being driven or reflected. Okay? So by adding some of that color into my cast shadow, it really makes it translucent. It makes it look very transparent. And so that transparency carries through the shadow, and it makes it very artistic in nature. It's abstract in some senses. Color tends to bleed in and out. I like that a lot. I'm going to bring some of this color over here. You can do the same thing with the edges over here as well. You can kind of carry some of this color underneath the egg. Soften the edge at the bottom if you want. Okay. That's pretty much how I want it to look so far. Now, again, we're not focusing on painting the cloth completely out. In other words, I'm not going to detail it or add a whole lot of work into it. I'm just going to paint it, go over it a little bit. Kind of help blend some of this color that I brought in. Okay. You can use your bigger brush to fill in some of the bigger areas. I'll get some of this nice red, some blue, and since this side could be darker, I can darken this side up a little bit. Much better. So your painting will start to take shape and become more evolved when you sit and work on the painting itself. When you start focusing and adding more adjustments to the painting, when you start adjusting some of the values or going back and reinforcing some of your midtones and highlights, or even some of your shadowing, it really benefits the painting itself. It reinforces your statement. And when I say reinforcing your statement, when you look at the actual painting, what pops to you? What statement are you making? And with the orange, you can see the statement right off the bat. You can see that this is where the where the light's not hitting, and you can see this nice lighting coming right from above, casting this highlight, and yet it creates this beautiful form. And it's what we're trying to capture with each one of our elements. And what I normally paint with just my fingertips. I'm holding the brush almost sideways, or like when I sketch. So I'm not getting into the habit of holding my brush like this and doing this, because sometimes it doesn't give me the flexibility or the motion to move. So here I can just move around and work the paint a little bit better by having my wrist more open in terms of pushing paint. Coming along. A little bit more purple there. Okay, a little bit more cobalt blue. Some Naples yellow. Some titanium white. I tend to go back and add color when I see where color needs to be added. And sometimes I'll add a little bit of color up in top just to break up the muddiness. The muddiness is one of the things I try to stay away from, because the painting now becomes too dirty and almost as if it's more of a gray tone or brown and monochromatic is what I want to say. I really don't want the painting to become monochromatic, only because it takes the reality of the painting away. It makes it almost look like, you know, you overlaid it with some type of gray wash, and that's not my intention. I'll add a little bit of this nice little crimson purple up on top. Give it some flair. And basically you can look at this painting as a study that you've come a long ways in learning how to apply the paint and learning how to mix the paint, and, you know, knowing what colors to work with. So far, the painting is starting to evolve even more. And when I work on something like this, I spend several weeks, of course, fine-tuning my painting up and definitely working it to the next level. If I want to really refine the painting and really bring it out, I'll spend more time on refining those areas that I think need to be reinforced. Going to make the cast shadow a little bit, kind of up around there. And so far the painting is taking a nice evolvement. It's evolved. It's progressed very well. Now, if you ever want to add more elements to your painting, if you want to add maybe a vase or a cup or a jar, you're more than welcome to. You're not restricted in just painting what I have here. This is just basically an exercise to show you how to paint, how to use the oil paints, how to mix and blend, and how to create form. I'm not trying to have you guys paint everything I paint, because what I paint is maybe something you may not want to paint. Maybe still lifes are not your thing, or maybe you do like still lifes, but you just don't like the elements that I put into the still life, and you want to try something different. And you can always go back and change stuff. I mean, if you don't like what you have on here, you can always change it, or you can just use this as a study and say, hey, I've learned a few things from the artist and picked up some new things that I didn't know, and you can use this as kind of a guide or a resource to look back at and apply to your next painting and stuff, to your next type of work. A little bit of this blue here. And if you notice, I'm just kind of going over the tabletop a little bit with some more of this purple. I'm kind of almost making it impressionistic. I have this thing for impressionism, and I think, you know, you can add a little bit of color, why not? You don't always have to be restricted to painting so monochromatic at times. That's one of the things they teach you in art school, is that you will begin painting in black and white before you start painting in color. At the academy, they'll have you paint a lot of casts, and they're actually prefab casts that are statuettes, and you paint them in black and white. Basically, you, just like a still life, you look at the cast, you paint it out, you draw it out, and then you paint it all in black and white tones, in gray tones, so that you learn how to use the paint. And the purpose behind that is to help you develop an understanding between values and how values change. I carry some of this paint up here on top a little bit to make it a little bit transparent. Nice little table edge. Kind of a hint of the table edge on top. And if you notice, I'm just kind of just applying some of this nice color up into the shadow to help soften it up. A little bit of cast shadow down here. Starting to evolve. I'm really happy with the painting. This, again, this is a nice little exercise for those of you that's never painted before. Using oils, this is a good way to learn. I'll bring some of this down here. I was going to bring some of my cast shadow, but I'm thinking about this piece, the edge. I want the edge to be more defined. Now, what I'm painting here is a tabletop edge, or the cloth. So think of the cloth kind of draping over the table, kind of softening the edge up a little bit there. Yes, it's looking nice. Yeah, just keep evolving the painting as you go along. Don't worry about trying to perfect this at the first try. You may make 100 paintings before you start to see your skill level to improve. I mean, it takes a lot of practice to get to a certain level, and it just doesn't happen overnight. So many people that want to learn how to paint and draw tend to get frustrated with the idea that I got to get it to look like this right away on the first shot. And normally that never happens. I mean, I don't care how much time you spend on the canvas painting, you're always going to run into the situation where nothing is going to happen overnight. I've been painting for over 30 years, and I can tell you right off the bat, from my experience, painting is like riding a bike. In order to be a great bike rider, or a great musician, or a great poet, or a great author of any kind, it takes a lot of practice and a lot of time behind the easel, behind the pen, behind the equipment that you're using. So painting is just like that. It takes time to evolve, and that's the process of painting. One thing I've learned a long time ago is that nothing happens overnight. And if you feel like you need to, step away from your painting once in a while and take a break and reanalyze what you're doing, do that. It doesn't hurt to go back and see the things that you're doing right or wrong. And most beginners have a tendency of trying to finish the painting in one setting, and that's fine if you're going to paint on a wet on wet style. But in reality, since you're learning to paint, you definitely would want to take that time and take your painting at a much slower pace so that you can see what's actually happening, rather than trying to force the painting to be something right away. As you notice, this painting has been an evolving process. We haven't worked on a painting for several hours. We've been doing this on stages, so we've noticed I work on my painting based upon what stage I'm at and where I'm evolving with it. So if day one was painting the orange, and if you noticed when we did paint the orange, we were at a stage that we needed to let it dry and reinforce the values that we actually applied. So take your time. Look at your painting from all different angles. Check to see what's going on. See what's actually working and not working for you. Okay? A lot of people have the tendency to try to finish this painting, like I said, in one setting, and when they look back at it and they say, wow, I could have done this better, I could have changed this, or I could have changed that, you tend to regret that those changes could have been done when you would have taken that time. So I'm basically just finishing the tabletop a little bit, just kind of adding my own flair to it, giving it my own twist. Of course, this is not what I normally do, so I think in terms of for a simple still life, this is, you know, a good start. Paint around the edges here on the egg a little bit. I just noticed it has some edges that were kind of rough. And so this is a tablecloth. This is not going to be perfectly straight. Okay. Well, there you go so far. I think we're progressing really nice. I think we've gotten a lot of nice values put in place. I think we got some nice cast shadowing developed. Let me reinforce this really quick and we'll wrap it up. Back and fix this here. There's some of this nice purple in there. Have it melt into the shadow a little bit. What I'm doing is taking some of the paint that I took from down here and bringing it into the egg. Softening it up a little bit. Bring this some down here as well. So far, looks really good. Okay. Well, there you are, folks. A completed still life painting, a very simple piece of art here we've created. Nothing spectacular. I mean, this is a really basic tutorial on how to paint fruit, and of course, you know, with what we've learned today and the previous lessons, I think you guys can easily paint simple fruit and be able to apply the color that you've learned. Now, remember, this painting right now, to me, in my opinion, is not considered a very finished, polished painting. It's at a stage where if I wanted to polish the painting up, I can go back and reinforce it with several more passages and make this become very, what I call hyper-realistic. But at this point, I'm going to leave it the way it is, allow you guys the opportunity to make the adjustments necessary for the painting, let you guys work on it some more, and who knows, maybe you might post a few of your paintings up on the blog and show me what you've done. But as for now, this is a good start, a good starting point for you to learn. And if you have any questions, look me up at Lavato Latino Art. You can also find me on Facebook under Vintage Arts by Lovato. So if you have any questions, please do Facebook me or email me at rlovato23@hotmail.com.